Hello, I'm Bill O'Donnell, and welcome to another program on spirituality. Today we're in part 2 with Sister Mary Catherine of
Fraternity.
The Fraternity of Our Lady, the
Blessed Virgin
The
Mary.
Blessed Virgin Mary. I'm sorry, it's a brand new order. It's only 40 years old in Italy with one convent, and she's been a member there for 35 years. In the previous section, I hope you get to see that sometime, or you saw it, she talked about her life growing up with no religion at all, but from a Jewish background, and struggles of a youth that most of us are familiar with in one way or another, and then her incredible journey into Christianity, and then eventually into Catholicism and as a Roman Catholic nun. So we're gracious to have her back. So welcome back, Sister Mary Catherine.
Thank you, Bill.
It was a tremendous sharing in part 1. I think now a lot of people, we don't see many nuns in habit in America that much anymore, although Mother Angelica is probably the most famous nun in this country, and she went from a modified back to a more traditional, and they carry on with that in EWTN, and I honor her memory. And you also mentioned the impact of Archbishop Fulton J. Sheehan on you in your early phases of watching him on TV and having it have an effect on you, among others. So they are pioneers of Christian television and spiritual growth. So we honor them here too. So it's great to have you back.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Take us back then now in part 2. You're in the convent. Start again at that point where you became a Catholic, and then how you got into the convent. I think it'd be worth going back over.
As I said last time, I had gone to Mass at the Catholic Church when I was living in Berkeley, though I didn't have any idea of what it was about Holy Communion, about what that was. But as I said, I did feel a very special and beautiful vibration in the Catholic Church, which I later found out was the real presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament.
Explain that to people. What does that mean?
Well, as Jesus said at the Last Supper, he told his disciples when he consecrated the bread and the wine and said, "This is my body, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me." And St. Paul goes on to say, as in the explanations in his epistles, as often as you do this, you show the Lord's death until he come again. And so Jesus said he won't leave us alone, but he will be with us. And through the Blessed Sacrament, he is with us, and we can receive in a marvelous way this presence of Christ, which the Catholic priest is privileged to be able to produce, quote unquote, through the transubstantiation, through God's mercy, that he allows this to happen. And it's something that, you can talk about, and somebody can say, well, I don't believe it, or whatever, but little by little you understand that God's goodness would have to do this. His love for us would constrain him to be with us in a way that is tangible, though spiritual, in receiving the Blessed Sacrament at Holy Communion. And this is what he has done, and in our community and in most Catholic communities, I imagine, you receive the body and blood of Christ every day, and it is a great strengthening reality, a protection in your life. I mean, we're used to looking at things like the protection is my whatever, against thieves and this kind of thing, but whatever man can make, man can break through. But what God gives is something deeper and stronger and more real and more beautiful and more lasting. And this, I believe, we need to deepen our spiritual reality within us in order to perceive these things that we may learn in theology or principles of the church or whatever. But you get them in your head, but they have to filter down into your heart in a knowledge that comes through being in contact with his love and knowing that just as when you love somebody and that really truly love them, that person asks you to do something, you'll do anything to make that person happy or give them what they need. And God is the same way, but infinitely more so. And we just need to attune our consciousness to this immense goodness that we do not have, but he will give us. And I think this is a large part of my life in the community, is this what we call spiritual combat, which is going against our natural propensities. And for instance, just as an example, something may happen between two people, there's an irritation there or whatever, and you're convinced that it's the other person's fault. Well, in spiritual combat, I think that you would, along with the principles that are taught in the gospel, you will forgive, you will look at it as, well, maybe there's something that's wrong in my way, or I've offended this person, or in our lives in general, instead of looking at them through the egotistical point of view of me being the center and me being right, all of that is displaced, and it's God who is in the center, and you want to look at things in that way so that a change gradually takes place. And as St. Paul says, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives within me. And you just feel that your logic is no longer the same one that is defensive and just totally solipsistic, but it's looking at the other person with love and wanting to live. Wanting to live as somebody in union with Christ, because it's such a much more beautiful life. And living in this world, you just see it's just overrun by violence and hatred and all this. And Christ is teaching us another way. And it's a way that truly brings us into harmony with what we were created to know. And in religious life, this is what we focus on, at least in our community, in this kind of spiritual growth and advancing along this path of union with God, which he wants and he's all too ready to give us. But we so often, dig in our heels and say, no, not that, because I'm right. And those things little by little are given up, and you see that they just don't have any importance, which is a very good thing about being, for me anyway, in a convent, because everything is focused on this, so you don't have to, just say, oh, whoops, but, it's always before your eyes in so many ways, at the Mass or in the music or in the paintings and artwork that are surrounding you, and the devotional practices that we have all focus on this. But it doesn't make you, turn into this kind of quote-unquote religious person. You become more and more yourself, more and more free to really express who it is, that original creature that you are. Whereas we have, accrued to ourselves so much in the world, so many, our psychology, our history, and all of the things that we learned was the way to look at things from our culture and in the Western world and all. But God's ways, as he says, are higher than our ways. As high as the heaven is above the earth, that's how much higher his ways and his thoughts are than ours, and our ways and our thoughts. So it's to, little by little, try and conform yourself to this reality so that you can benefit from what he wants to give you, and getting rid of, like out goes the bad air, in comes the good air. Well, the good air is the Holy Spirit, who is love. And we're so much happier when we're living a life of love and sharing that love with people, whoever they are, whether they're in need or just our friends with us. It's a different person. And I've discovered that within myself. And I guess, I am sure, that's why I found happiness, because I believe, I don't say I've reached the epitome of it all, because we never can. It's an infinite path that, God is totally ready to unfold to us step by step. But I thank him so much for the fact that in these years, and it has been a concerted effort for many years, that he has been faithful and, given me what he has promised. And that is true fulfillment of my being.
Tell us a little bit more about how the sacraments interact with you and your community, how you use the sacraments to further this goal to be closer to God.
Well, I don't know.
A sacrament of reconciliation, for instance. You mentioned if you had a conflict with someone
right.
and you thought you're right, and then how would that help in terms of rectifying that within yourself, within your soul?
Well, in our community, actually, it's maybe a little different from others. I know communities in which there is confession or the sacrament of reconciliation every week. We do not have that. We, for the major holidays or feast days, we have confession, and also for other ones, I don't know, maybe about 8 or 9 times a year or something like that. But I think there is a reason behind that, which is many people will tend to confess the same thing over and over again, and it's just, we have the same proclivities to, falling into different temptations that we, but I think in our community, what we tend to try to do is to look more deeply than just, well, of course, if you did something that, you want to confess, you do, but is to look more deeply into the tendency that you have to not put God first. It's a more spiritual kind of a confession than just, I did this, and this, and this. It brings you deeper into it, because you know that the priest in persona Christi, in the place of Christ, is going to forgive you and give you absolution and give you some counsels. And you want to, after the confession, not just feel, well, okay, I'm free, I did those things, but they're washed away. That too, but also that you're kind of grounded more deeply in this path that you really have chosen, and you want to go along, that you've had this interaction with Christ through the priest and through expressing what it is in your life that is really holding you back from a deeper walk with him. So, that's more or less what I feel my confessions are.
Tell us a little about your life there, in the sense that, you're an American, you grew up in America. You were how old when you went into the convent?
36.
And so you've been there for 35 years or going on that. So what's the interaction? What's the daily life there? Then how does it support this spiritual life that you're pursuing?
Well, we have sisters from all over the world. We have 2 from Hong Kong, but who grew up in Geneva, and Lebanese, Greek, French, Italian, American, young ones. We have some, I don't know if any are still in their 20s, yeah, maybe in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s.
You have Mass every day in the morning?
Or in the afternoon? Sometimes it's not, usually in the afternoon, but sometimes it changes according to the day. And we wake up in the morning, we go down to the chapel, we sing lauds, we sing in Gregorian chant in Latin. That's 5 psalms, and then the Benedictus, which is the prayer of Zachariah, I guess it is. And then we say the rosary together. It's not always this way, but then we have some time in the chapel if you want to, or some people go out and do their chores or go up and make their bed or whatever they want to do, they can do. I usually try and stay in the chapel for that time. Then we have breakfast. We have groups of 4 sisters that changes every week. for the kitchen, and they go and prepare breakfast, which is not an American breakfast. It's just bread and, or, you know, jam and coffee or tea, whatever. Then
After breakfast,
after
happens?
breakfast, well, we may have singing practice because we do a lot of that. The sisters really do beautiful music, both instrumental and it's just singing. And then after that, you know, it's really amazing because we're kind of on our own to do what we want to do. I, for many years, would go out and hang out all the laundry for the community, and I recently asked to be alleviated from that charge because it was just it had gotten to be too much for me at that point. Anyway, then now there are a lot of younger sisters who are doing it now, and I'm very happy about that. But so I do a lot of gardening, and or I may have a letter that I have to write. You're really on your own to decide, which I think is such a good thing, because instead of having, you know, the time cut up, now you've got a half an hour to do this, you have the freedom of the morning, and you do what you have to do, and it's your responsibility to do it. And if you don't want to take that responsibility, you don't have to. But I feel for myself personally that I really do want to take that responsibility, because I do want to correspond to the deepest and the highest calling. So I don't want to get out of things. And, you know, I may see something that, you know, needs to be put here or put there or cleaned up or fixed. And I try and, you know, do that. And I'm sure everybody is doing that in some way. A lot of sisters are doing, you know, they may be doing music, they may be cooking, they may be, some are sewing, they sew all of our habits, and others are doing artwork. We have an atelier where we make many statues. They do creches and they do, they're beautiful sculptures that they do, and bas-relief. There's this one round one of the Madonna, and people want them, and so we make more for them. And then there's a lot of, our father was a very, very spiritual and profound man, and his homilies have been put into book form, and we're continually working on those.
What was his name again?
Theodosius Marie of the Cross. It's a Greek name, Theodosius, and Marie, because we all are consecrated to the Blessed Virgin. We make this consecration and take the name Mary. And his books, some of them have been translated in English. I work on this. One of them is out, and several of them are in process of being, you know, finished, the translation, and then finding an editor.
Is there a men's community attached?
There is a men's community. We have brother priests who they have several different communities that they've been asked to take. One in France at Mailly-le-Château, and another one in Geneva, and then they have a house in Rome, which sometimes they stay at if they have some kind of apostolic work there. And
but one of the things they're doing is saying Mass for the women's community every day?
Yeah, one priest does, and I know they're very, very busy. I don't know exactly what they do, but I know they have a million things that they're doing. Okay. And
one of the questions I wanted to ask that a friend asked me to ask you, because not being Catholic and the rest of it, to want to know, because you had a full life and you're 35 by the time you went in, so what are the things anything that you miss from your pre-religious days, or have they just left you in terms of?
Should I tell the truth on that?
Of course, why not?
I think what I miss, although sometimes I admit I think I'd like to just live a hermetic life alone with God in a little cabin somewhere in the beautiful woods. But I do miss being out and meeting a lot of people, which I do when I come to the United States, because I love people and I love to share that love with them. And I can do that in the community, and I try to do it with the sisters, or the younger sisters, you know, just to be a big sister for them in whatever way I can. But I do, and people do come, and I can, you know, they come to see me, and
Well, that's why,
but
after witnessing this at the cathedral and other places where we met at St. Francis Cathedral, that's one of the reasons I invited you to have this opportunity, because you are now sharing with people, even though you can't see them.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of this medium.
Hi there.
Yeah, this medium.
I see you.
That's right. What advice, now that you've had both sides of this life, you've had the sort of confused early life of God help me, and then now this seeing the light and being directed towards it, and now you have these things to share. What advice would you have, particularly to other women who may be having difficult lives of their own? What advice would you have for them, or recommendations that might be helpful?
Well, I wanted to say, just regarding what I miss, I choose, because the door is always open. I can always leave. Nobody's got me shackled or anything. But my desire in thinking about all of it is, well, I know that God can do through prayer more than this world dreams of. And I believe that my life lived for Him is efficacious in many ways, that more so than getting out and having the joy of meeting people and all. So my choice has been that I want to, in this lifetime, for whatever time God has given me on this earth, is to deepen my relationship with Him more and more, because I know that after this life, we have eternal life. I mean, we're not just here and then gone, and this life that He has inculcated into me is the life that I'm going to be living forever. And the more rich and deep and beautiful it is, I believe that my eternal life will be according to that, and infinitely more so. But I believe that we have that possibility to choose to zero in on something that is eternal, rather than just, these things that make sense in our lives to do. We have to do them, and even in the convent, to go shopping for food and this and that. These are all things that we all have to do. But I would think that to have as our deepest goal communion and communication with God in our hearts takes precedence over all of the rest, and we can do all of the rest with it. As I say, I choose to exclude many things in my life that I could do, so that I can do what I think is the essential. In the gospel where Jesus is at the home of Martha and Mary Magdalene, and Mary Magdalene is sitting at His feet listening to Him, and Martha is doing a very good job of preparing the food and busy about a lot of things. And she says to Jesus, well, tell my sister, that she should be helping me with these things that I'm doing. And Jesus says to her, Martha, you're concerned about many things, but your sister Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken from her. This doesn't mean that Mary never made a meal or anything like that, but there at that time, this was the example for us, the word for us, that the better part of our life, if we can hear it and tune in on it, is to listen to Him in whatever way He speaks to our heart, and to say, this is the important, not going to that great movie that just came out that I mean, we can do that too, but if it's going to take you away and cause your consciousness to, get dispersed in a million things, and later you're going to be thinking about all this, it's better for us to tune in on what is an eternal vibration and will never end, and will bring us what we were going to the movie to get, some kind of relaxation or joy or diversion or whatever. Those things, it's always, okay, just one more, and then I'll stop. But if we just say, no, now I've got to really concentrate on what is essential in life, and not let myself be, attached to a million little things that crop up at all times. Just to have that discipline in your life to seek what is really the one thing necessary that Jesus told, which is to listen to him, that we can do in many ways. And we know when we're doing it because we're going deep within ourselves, and we can be looking at a beautiful sunset or a mountain or listening to the rain or whatever, and yet deep in our hearts we're hearing another message that is an eternal message. And that is the one that brings the peace that we are seeking for in our lives, and the joy.
You mentioned in the previous segment that you had come from a Jewish background but not practicing. For those, we only have a few minutes left, so for those out there who have no religious background or training, or they haven't been happy in it, what recommendations based on your life or your experience would you have for them in terms of seeking a better life?
Sometimes I think that I was really fortunate not to have any religious. Some people tell me about the nuns they had who would, hit their knuckles with a ruler and this kind of thing. And I mean, God is so, universal, let's say. I don't think he requires us to come through a certain channel. As in my life, I believe that if we assiduously seek him, we will come to the time when he shows us, by his mercy and grace, what it is that actually made this possible. But I think that, we can seek him not necessarily through religion. A lot of times that does become kind of a head trip or a guilt trip or, something. I would hope that anybody who is seeking the Lord would come to the place where they would be able to avail themselves of the sacraments which God has given to us for our purification and our strengthening. But I would say just starting out that it's within our heart, that the Holy Spirit is calling to each of us each in a different way, but to pursue that way, as fervently as you can, and as naturally, supernaturally as you can, without getting into a whole I've got to get into this religious spiritual thing, because in the end analysis, let's say, it's just finding who you really and truly are, but not who you are making yourself into, but who God has made you. And that is your greatest fulfillment, is to find that. And he is always present and always ready to receive your offering of love and to respond with an infinitely greater pouring out of his love.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time again, Sister. It was wonderful. Thank you for coming
Bill.
back and sharing with us this. It's been great. Look at the smile on your face. You see that at home? I hope so. It's been a joy for us here at the studio to share with you, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Bill.
So I hope that some of this, of what Sister Mary Catherine has shared with you, is of some value to you, and I hope that you'll take her advice and recommendation and seek that spiritual life within yourself, wherever that is. So thank you for coming, Sister Mary Catherine. On behalf of everybody here, our director, Marshall, George behind the scenes, our camera people, Casey and Richard today, and particularly all our viewers, we want to thank you for viewing. And stay tuned next week at this time for another program on spirituality.